My spouse and I have been married for 7 years, and we each have teenage daughters. My wife's daughter has always lived with her father. My spouse is a caring mother. However, her ex-spouse moved to the other side of the country, convinced that he could provide a better living arrangement for the child than my wife could. 2 years later, they went to live in his home country, 12 or 18 hours flight away from us. They invited my wife to visit several times a year, and they also sent their daughter to visit us for summer vacations. My ex-spouse found a job not far from us, and in recent months, my wife's daughter has spent about half of her time with us. Our house, located in a nice neighborhood, has only 2 bedrooms and 1 bathroom. My daughter has always had her own private room, while my stepdaughter has not had that opportunity. This situation proved to be difficult for all of us. When my daughter found out that she would have to share a room, she reacted badly. She tried to deny my stepdaughter access to their shared room, threw her things out the window, and began to create conditions to make my stepdaughter feel unwelcome. One day the stepdaughter felt so ill that her mother had to call an ambulance as we did not have a car. At the hospital, there was a conflict between my wife and her ex-spouse, which resulted in her having to leave the hospital. The ex-spouse adamantly refuses to let the stepdaughter back into the house on the grounds of his legal custody rights. We have a dog surveillance camera in our home that allows us to see the girl's room when the bedroom door is open. We had recently moved the camera and had not yet had a chance to inform our daughter. One day, when I decided to check the footage from the camera, I found my daughter bringing nuts into the room and eating them while sitting on my stepdaughter's bed. She then touched items belonging to the stepdaughter. The latter, unfortunately, is deathly allergic to nuts. It is strictly forbidden to have nuts in our home, except in the garage where they may be consumed, after which hands must be washed thoroughly. My spouse was beyond angry when she found out what had happened. She immediately went to her daughter's room, where she began yelling at her and demanded that she immediately pack her things and leave the house. I helped my wife convince my daughter to pack her belongings and arranged for my brother to pick her up. My wife insists that my daughter can no longer enter her home. We have filed a police report and are now planning for my daughter to reside in a group home or boarding school for the next few years. I am currently facing pressure from my family and my daughter's mother. They are insisting that I keep my wife. This pressure stems from a desire to avoid sending my daughter elsewhere. However, I strongly reject these appeals and support the decision to punish my daughter. My position stems from the realization that my daughter's actions have resulted in significant harm and loss to my wife. Because of these circumstances, my wife can no longer accept my daughter into our shared home. I am now perceived by many as not being a good enough parent. During this difficult time, my brother is the only one providing me with support. He has offered a temporary solution that includes helping my daughter on his farm. So we are trying to find a longer-term solution that includes considering my wife's interests instead of taking my child's side. My situation is complicated by the fact that my daughter's mother is unfortunately unable to take on full-time childcare at this time. This presents me with the challenge of finding other ways to handle the situation while balancing my responsibility to my family with my desire to ensure my daughter's well-being. What has happened to your daughter is staggering. Your decision, while seemingly harsh, is due to the fact that her actions were extremely serious. She acted in a way that could have caused permanent harm to your stepdaughter, even risking her life for an elaborate plan. A teenager, though young, is old enough to realize the depth of her act. It is important that your wife be able to protect your daughter from further threats, which requires her to act decisively to preserve their relationship. By choosing to support your wife, you are not putting her interests above those of your child. Rather, you are demonstrating that mistakes have consequences, and that if you had done otherwise, it would only confirm your daughter's assumption that her actions are impunity. Perhaps some of the blame for what happened also lies with the upbringing that allowed this behavior to develop. But right now, it is important to focus on solving the problem rather than finding fault. Your suggestion of giving your daughter her own room shows a desire to provide her with a safe and comfortable space. This is an important step toward her education and understanding the seriousness of her action. The situation became more complicated when Sophie's mom began demonstrating pettiness by demanding reimbursement for all visits made using their membership and guest passes. Now our relationship is marred by tension, and I have to face her in various public places, at school, at ballet and gymnastics classes, and at the girls' weekly games. This perspective makes me reflect on my action, specifically whether I should have refused to buy a snack for her child. In the context of our interaction, I tried to do my best to maintain a friendly relationship and ensure our children's comfort. However, the resulting conflict over the snacks and Sophie's mom's subsequent demands for reimbursement put me in a difficult position, forcing me to balance my desire to maintain a good relationship with the need to protect my boundaries. A recent conversation has created a misunderstanding between you and your daughter's friend's mom that has called into question the strength of your friendship. She, having paid the entrance fee for your daughter on more than one occasion, has been generous without demanding a financial return in return or abusing your friendship. Now that the question of reciprocity has arisen, you stand at the threshold of deciding whether you desire a friendship based on mutual favors and calculations. Preferences seem to lean toward an interaction where each contribution is valued and rewarded accordingly. This implies that any future invitations will imply certain expectations and require appropriate budget planning. As for your daughter's mother, her unwillingness to recognize the seriousness of the situation is causing additional difficulties. Her opinion that her ex-spouse should leave his new wife and the attitudes of the rest of the family, who may be supportive or critical of you, exacerbate the situation. However, it is important to remain focused on the well-being and safety of all the children and on finding a constructive way forward. This situation is a difficult test for your entire family, requiring wisdom, patience, and strength to overcome the challenges that have arisen. Next story. I have important people in my life. My teenage daughter Ellie and her best friend Sophie. Both girls have special needs, and despite their young age, mentally they remain at about 6 years old. Recently, Sophie's mom approached me with a suggestion. She shared that they had been spending time at an indoor playground and Sophie had a desire to invite Ellie to join in their games. For convenience, Sophie's mom offered to sign me up for her punch card, allowing me to save on the cost of visits by prepaying for 10 to 20 visits. This offer reassured me as the visit would become free for us. So without wasting any time, I put Ellie in the car and we headed out to see them. About an hour into the game, the girls were hungry. I had thoughtfully brought a snack for Ellie, but to my surprise, Sophie's mom didn't have any snacks. I advised her to buy something from the on-site cafe, but she said she had forgotten her wallet and asked me to buy snacks for Sophie. I explained that taking care of my child was my priority and that I could not make additional commitments without prior arrangement. She reminded me that she had paid for Ellie's entrance, implying that I could pay for snacks in return. I responded by emphasizing that I was willing to share if I had been warned in advance, but I didn't think it was right to waste funds because of someone else's unpreparedness. Despite this, Sophie's mom still found a way to purchase snacks, which left questions about her previous claims of lack of money. Unfortunately, this prospect portends the end of your friendship. Thinking back to the moment when your friend's mom covered the cost of your visit to the play area, it's obvious that your inability to buy a $2 snack was a stumbling block. The gesture could have been a show of gratitude for her hospitality, but your decision led to a disagreement. You may want to rethink your attitude toward friendship and mutual support, because even a little support can go a long way, especially in special needs communities where such relationships are especially important. Finding friends that your children can get along with and feel comfortable with can be difficult. Therefore, every action and decision in such a community carries much more weight and significance. It may be worth reflecting on what lessons you can learn from this situation and how you can build relationships in the future to maintain and strengthen friendships based on mutual respect, understanding, and willingness to help each other. Now I want to tell a different story. Last year, I decided to limit my communication with my husband's mom because she was interfering in my personal affairs. The main point is that I was contacted again by my estranged father's relatives, including his parents and 2 siblings. They expressed regret for allowing myself and my younger sister to be sent to foster care in the past after our parents died when I was 6 years old and my sister was only 2. Unfortunately, my sister passed away shortly afterward and I was left all alone. I am now 29 years old, and after more than 2 decades of separation, their sudden appearance made me irritated. My father was married and had children when he started having an affair with my mom. Their relationship caused the end of his previous marriage. These events led to my father being hated for obvious reasons. The same fate befell me as well as my sister after she was born. My memories of my father's children are extremely hazy and carry only negative emotions. My father's parents, his siblings, all unanimously supported his ex-wife and children after my parents died. They concluded that the only way out for my sister and I would be to live in foster care. Since we had no one left on my mother's side of the family, my mother was also a foster child. I did not see my relatives at my sister's funeral. Her funeral was organized by the state because none of the relatives claimed rights to her body. At that time, I was too young to change anything. Because of the whole experience, I had no desire to welcome them back into my life, forgive them, and build relationships. My mother-in-law began to express the opinion that I should give my in-laws a chance, suggesting that otherwise I would regret it. She wondered how I could get to know my siblings if I didn't take the initiative myself. My husband asked her to stop, and I explained that my siblings were not among those seeking contact with me. From the limited information I had, they had shown no interest in establishing a relationship with me. Moreover, they seemed to believe that I should have died along with my sister. Despite this, my mother-in-law insisted that I should try to establish a relationship and even tried to get their names so she could contact them via Facebook, ignoring my husband's requests to drop the matter. When she made her actions known through Facebook, I did not hold back and demanded that she stay out of matters that did not concern her. She responded by telling me not to be rude and claimed she wanted to help. My husband was furious at her actions when he found out what had happened, and an argument ensued between them. His brother then intervened, suggesting that I should have just kept her out of the house and left it up to my husband to resolve the issue, making it clear that my reaction was too emotional. This situation raises the question of whether I really did wrong by intervening and voicing my opinion, and whether my husband's brother was right to suggest a different approach to solving the problem. No, you did not do wrong. Your mother-in-law continued to interfere in your personal affairs against your will, which is unacceptable. You have every right to refuse contact with your in-laws after everything that has happened. I am truly sorry for your experiences. Mother-in-laws really should learn to respect other people's boundaries. Realizing what happened to two innocent children is shocking. Your husband's brother doesn't seem to understand the importance of setting boundaries and continues to meddle in matters that are not his. His actions reflect an unwillingness to remove himself from a situation that does not concern him. Your mother-in-law apparently wishes to remain at the center of the drama for the rest of her life, dreaming of a happy reunion that she could orchestrate. This behavior seems selfish and judgmental. By crossing your boundaries, your mother-in-law shows complete disrespect for your wishes. Her behavior may be a reflection of outdated views that kinship ties are always stronger and cannot be rejected due to toxicity. If I were in that situation, I wouldn't want that person in my life either. My next story. I am living with my girlfriend. I have recently noticed that she has begun to engage in planning for our mutual future. However, she does not involve me in the decision-making process. She sets the plans and expects me to follow them without objection. Last week, during a conversation about the upcoming weekend, I expressed my desire to just relax at home and take care of personal business. In response, she mentioned her plan to visit a coffee shop downtown. Surprised, I asked why my opinion had not been considered. She only replied that she had assumed my agreement. Another time, last week evening, she suddenly announced her intention to spend February vacation for a week, having already chosen a place to go. She didn't see fit to ask me if I wanted to go at all, or find out my preferences for a vacation spot. She simply decided for both of us, expecting me to not only agree with her choice, but to be willing to spend my annual vacation and pay half of the cost of the trip. In response, I merely emphasized that such decisions should be made jointly and not based solely on my own desires. When I expressed my displeasure that she was handling my finances without my knowledge, she flared up, claiming that she thought I should have had a stake in her plans. I tried to explain that the choice of the direction of our leisure time together should be discussed and agreed upon by both of us, especially when it came to matters requiring financial investment. I emphasized that her habit of making plans for me without considering my opinion or even informing me in advance must stop. All our plans should be based on mutual agreement and discussion. However, instead of recognizing the need for joint planning, she accused me of unnecessarily initiating an argument, claiming that her intentions were only to arrange something pleasant for both of us. She presented my desire to participate in decision-making as something ridiculous, claiming that I should appreciate her efforts in arranging our leisure time without my consent. I pointed out that I do not consider myself unreasonable for seeking equal participation in the planning of our life together. I find it difficult to understand why she does not see the importance of shared decision-making, especially when it involves the use of funds that do not belong to her alone. I have emphasized that if she fails to change her approach to planning our lives, it could be a problem for our future together. I strongly encourage you to set clear boundaries regarding this matter. If she continues to ignore these boundaries, you will need to consider more drastic action. Trying to justify that she is trying to organize something nice is actually hiding a desire to implement her own plans, assuming your automatic agreement. You may have shown leniency in the past by allowing her to take the initiative in planning, which has led to her forming this habit. However, you have every right to be involved in decisions regarding plans for the two of you, and that needs to be made clear to her. I cannot accept the assumption that my weekend should be spent solely according to her plans, especially if that includes sudden trips to coffee shops that disrupt my personal vacation plans. It's important to ask when the last time shared time planning came from you and emphasize the importance of communication in these processes. If she is unable to adapt and accommodate your needs, it may be indicative of underlying differences in your approach to the relationship. Some couples are fine with one partner taking on the role of planner, but this only works if there are clearly established boundaries and mutual understanding. I understand that she may like to take the lead in planning. Perhaps she fears that without her proactivity, your plans together will not be realized. Therefore, it is worth paying attention to the importance of planning and organizing dates together to strengthen your relationship based on mutual respect and understanding. A story that really surprised me. We grandparents have the honor of raising 2 twin grandchildren. There is not always harmony between them. This is especially difficult because the younger sibling has developmental disabilities manifested in autism and sometimes has emotional difficulties. In an attempt to teach them discipline, we use the timeout method. The duration of it depends on their age. If a child leaves the timeout spot early, we start the countdown all over again. In one case, it took the youngest about an hour to complete a task, which provoked significant family discord and showed that traditional methods of punishment may not be effective. It is important to note that the younger one participates in regular school activities and is able to absorb the learning material, although he takes longer to do so. The older grandson expressed concerns about his brother's learning and social interaction, which drew our attention to the need for an individualized approach in their education. We suggested a day trip for the older grandson to give him the gift of being the center of attention for a while and to support his interests. When we approached their parents with this idea, we encountered their displeasure at the exclusion of the younger grandson from the plans. However, we explained that our goal was to provide the older grandchild with personal space and social time, emphasizing the importance of paying attention to each child's individuality. Our day spent alone with our oldest grandson was filled with joyful moments. We delighted him with the purchase of a new hooded sweatshirt and a small amount of candy. However, the homecoming was marred by a new disagreement with his parents and the sadness of his younger brother, who was upset about staying home. Attempting to explain our decision to take a time out, during which the older one simply spent time apart, did not yield the desired understanding. Junior expressed his frustration by throwing food and objects. The presence of autism in a child is not an excuse for undesirable behavior. More often than not, it is an indication that more effort is needed to conform to social norms. The fact that a younger child is attending regular classrooms is a sign of significant achievement and effort invested in his or her education and socialization. Giving individualized attention to each child plays an important role in their development. It is especially valuable when you find opportunities to spend time with your older grandchild, making them feel noticed and important. Some of your younger grandchild's behaviors may be valid reactions to certain situations, while others may be the result of wanting to achieve a certain goal through tantrums. It is important to realize that as a grandparent, you are not entirely responsible for making educational interventions, especially when it comes to the specifics of raising a child with autism. Siblings of children with autism often face limitations in their behavioral responses and opportunities for socialization because the family's attention may be focused on the needs of the child with special needs. Giving an older grandchild respite and special attention is a sign of caring and understanding. The timeout method may not be the most effective way to discipline a child with autism, especially if it continues to be used despite its low effectiveness. If you are spending time with one of your grandchildren, it is important to ensure that the other child also receives your attention and support. Creating a situation where one child feels excluded can be detrimental to their emotional well-being. As adults, your role includes being understanding and tolerant of each child's individual needs and striving to create an atmosphere of mutual respect and love within the family.